This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC, Whisper Room, and Eventide. So get ready to rock.
So here's Joe Walsh, one of the greatest guitarists of all time. The first guitar he pulls out, it's a Fernandez V. To me, it looked like the cheapest guitar ever. I'm like, are you kidding? We're at Johnny's place. The place is covered in guitars. And I'm like, grab any of these and it's going to be better. It's like, no, this is great. And he plays, and the tone is incredible.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. If you're sick of bothering the neighbors when you are trying to record your music or ruining your recordings with outside noises, but you're not ready to spend a ton of money on permanent studio construction yet, then consider getting a Whisper Room ISO booth for your studio. Whisper Room offers the instant solution for a comfortable, quiet, ventilated, portable ISO booth with easy line of sight for recording vocals, guitar amps, or even drums. Get 10% off the 4x4 or 4x6 booth when you mention Recording Studio Rockstars. Go to whisperroom.com or click the link in the show notes below. What do Michael Brower, Joe Ciccarelli, Mike Gazowski, Dave Pensato, and George Massenburg all have in common? They all have great things to say about Eventide. Originating in a New York City basement in 1971 with the original Instant Phaser and H910 harmonizer, Eventide continues to transform the sound of music with the iconic H9000 harmonizer, visionary guitar effects like the H9 pedal, and now a whole suite of incredible plugins for your studio. Go to eventide.com to learn more or click the link in the show notes below. This episode is sponsored by OWC, Otherworld Computing, which you can find at OWC.com, your trusted source for memory and speed upgrades, DIY installs, and used Macs for your studio. Let OWC focus on keeping your studio Mac in killer condition so that you can focus on making great music. Why ditch your existing Mac when you can take your studio far into the future with OWC? Learn more at OWC.com and learn how you can supercharge your studio Mac. The speed to create, the capacity to dream. Find out how awesome your Mac can be at OWC. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Justin Corky Cortelyou. Am I saying that right?
That's perfect.
All right, sweet, man. A platinum-selling Nashville producer, engineer, and mixer who has worked with all sorts of great talent, learning under greats like bluegrass legend Bil VornDick, who worked with Marty Robbins, Ralph Stanley, Alison Krauss, mixing guru Chuck Ainlay, working with the Dixie Chicks, Mark Knopfler, Miranda Lambert, and master mixer Mike Shipley, working with Def Leppard, Shania Twain, Maroon 5, and Aerosmith. Justin studied music and engineering at Middle Tennessee State University, also my alma mater, became the night manager for Soundstage Studios before moving out to LA to work with Mike Shipley. And Justin then teamed up with producer, songwriter, and musician Tommy Henriksen. He partnered with Tommy, developing artists, negotiating record deals with Warner Brothers, Geffen, and Interscope, touring and doing front of house. And then in 2008, Tommy and Justin moved their operations to Nashville, Tennessee, where they teamed up with legendary producer Bob Ezrin of Pink Floyd, Alice Cooper, and Kiss. Alongside Bob, Justin worked with some of the biggest artists in history, including Paul MacCartney, Deep Purple, Alice Cooper, Joe Perry, Johnny Depp, Fish, Keisha, and Kiss, to name just a few. Working out of Ezrin's Anarchy Studio, Justin's work has gone on to gain international acclaim, including numerous number ones. And Justin has also had one foot in Nashville's country music scene. In 2014, Justin engineered and mixed Jared Neiman's High Noon record. The first single, Drink to That All Night, scored a 2-week number one at country radio and earned an RIAA Platinum certification. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Justin continues to engineer and mix in all genres, from the Mongolian rock band Hang-I to Fish, from Alice Cooper to Taylor Swift. Justin brings his unique musicality to each project and draws from his pedigree to inject creativity and energy into every record. That's awesome, man. Please welcome Justin, Corky, Cortelyou to Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, Justin or Corky, are you ready to rock?
Both. We are ready to rock.
All right, cool, man. Is it like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing? Are you like, is there like off, good Justin, bad Corky or something like that?
Well, it started off like that, and then it just, the Corky nickname just, it had a life of its own, and now everyone just calls me Corky. Every now and then when I first meet someone, or if it's like an important meeting, I'll go by Justin, but then as the comfort, grows, then I'm Corky.
Nice. All right. Well, we'll see how comfortable we get in the podcast.
Awesome. Sounds
all right.
good.
So tell us how you got started out in recording. Give us a little bit more of the history. I know you have a background in music and studying music too before you sort of got into the recording side.
Yeah. So I started playing trombone like in third grade. I was really into it. I was classically trained, private lessons, and then I started playing guitar as you do in high school and middle school, and I played in a few bands. And the trombone thing was awesome. I played in a lot of symphonies and jazz, and I got to tour Australia. I played in the Sydney Opera House, and it was really an important.
What instrument were you playing? You were playing
trombone. Yeah.
Right
So I had a lot of fun, but I knew I didn't want to do that as a career, because I was always just reading the guitar world, guitar player magazines. I was looking through all the catalogs, AMS and Thoroughbred and all those, from back in the day. I just had gear lust. I wanted all of the pedals, all the amps, all the everything. And I was in a metal band playing guitar, and I knew I wanted to do something in music, but also something that had gear involved. And somehow, I don't know how, but I got this Mix magazine in the mail, and I was like, what is this? So I'm looking through it. I had no idea what anything was, but I saw some guy recording a band sitting behind a console that had a screen. I think it was a 9000, had a computer screen in it. I thought, what the hell is that? I want to do that. I want to be that guy. I'm sure he's got a cool job. So, and that was like junior year in college. So I started looking, at recording programs and went to MTSU, and I thought, well, this is it. This is perfect.
So junior year in college, you were already at MTSU, or you were somewhere else?
I'm sorry, junior year in high school.
Oh, in high school.
Yes, in high school is when I got that. And so we were doing all the college tours and stuff, and MTSU was the one that seemed to stand out, because you could get. And
where were you? Were you already in Nashville at that time?
No, I was in Pittsburgh, just outside of Pittsburgh.
Okay, cool.
So it was a bit of a, Yeah,
I got drawn down there from Boston.
Oh, yeah. So, you had probably had the chance you could do Berkeley or, whatever.
Yeah, I went and looked at Berkeley, and then Berkeley was more money than I had to spend.
Yeah.
And then they were like, well, there's this magazine called Mix Magazine, and they just put out their yearly issue where they list all the music recording schools all across the country.
Yeah.
I was like, no way. And so I ran off to the store, got it. And then I just rode away to all of them,
Yeah.
So you moved from Pittsburgh down to Nashville. Do you remember going to Nashville thinking, man, I sure do love country music. That's the place for me?
Oh, no, I didn't know anything about country music. When I was in high school, I was into Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin, but then Dream Theater and, all the Shredders, Joe Satriani, Eric Johnson, Steve Morris was, I never got into Steve Vai, but I loved Steve Morris. And, in my room, I had posters of, Joe Perry and Slash, and, I would just rip out these ads and put them all over my walls and stuff. So
Joe Satriani, that's Surfing with the Aliens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know that John Cuniberti has been on the podcast? We talked all about making that record.
Oh,
you have to go listen to that one.
I will listen to that on my way home tonight. I swear, because I loved that record. Oh man, it was So that was where I was. So moving down to Murfreesboro was a bit of a culture shock, and Nashville wasn't what Nashville is today.
Yeah, definitely.
Back then, this was 98. And the good thing was they just started, the Preds came to town. So there was hockey, which was,
that mattered to you in Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah. I was a huge hockey fan, So that was cool. There were a few things that kind of kept that tie back to Pittsburgh. Piranha Brothers sandwiches, it was a big deal for me. But yeah, anyway, MTSU was great. And the best part of it was the internship. Getting to work with Bil VornDick was amazing. And some of my favorite memories are interning with him.
So tell us more about Bil VornDick. Who is he?
So Bil VornDick is like the bluegrass guru. He has been in it so long and has done so many bluegrass records, and he's won so many Grammys and awards and stuff. But he's just this great human, great guy. His acoustic miking technique is pretty incredible.
Ooh, we got to ask you some of those.
Yeah.
What you learned from, do you remember some of the stuff you learned about mic and acoustics?
Yeah, absolutely. He actually.
Just go for it, man. We don't have to come back. We don't have to circle back for that question. You just tell us right now.
So acoustics, Bill would always say, and this is one of the inspirational quotes that I could tell you, but he would always say, you listen with two ears, why would you mic an acoustic with just one? So he's all about, stereo miking acoustic instruments, and, the way that he would do it, it sounded amazing. One kind of, where the neck hits the bridge on the bottom,
right,
and then one close to the body, and it would simulate how a player would actually hear.
Ooh, hold on, Rockstars. I'm going to describe what Justin's doing right now. So you're doing that thing where you're playing, but you're also like turning and tilting your head, like you're sort of leaning in with your left ear towards the neck of the guitar. If you're a righty guitar player,
right?
Which is always a confusing thing because really it's your left hand that does all the work. but like your left ear is leaning in a little bit, and your right ear is almost.
Yeah. So he would kind of mimic that with the stereo miking.
I think that was the direction you did it, or did you do your right ear? I did it like the hand?
It doesn't really matter.
That
was just the concept.
Never mind. I take it all back. I thought the head twist was super important.
Well, maybe it is. I don't know. I just put him up to where it sounded good, but that was his whole philosophy, and it was spot on. I mean, you got to make sure it's in phase.
Yeah. All right. So we got to describe things pretty verbally because it's a podcast. But the neck mic is sort of like that classic 12th fret location that we're all familiar with.
Kind of a little bit lower.
A little bit lower. Right?
A little bit lower, and pointing
up a little.
Yeah, I believe that's where he had it. That's where I do it. That's where kind of I feel like it always sounds really good.
We only care about you now anyway. So.
Yeah. It's all about me.
All right, and then the other one
the other one was at the body, slightly above and facing down toward kind of the body below
sort of like
the bridge.
Below the bridge.
Yeah.
Oh, it was lower than the bridge. No, it was above the bridge.
So it was like,
but it's pointed towards lower.
It's above the body and pointed down towards like right below the bridge.
Cool.
So yeah, and when you do that, I just remember soloing up each one of those, and they wouldn't sound amazing until you put them together.
Right.
And as long as you got
the complete picture.
Yeah, if you got the phase right, it was pretty incredible.
Hold on, let me see if you look amazing with just one eye. Yeah, two is better. My
Try
left
closing
might be better
them.
than my right too.
So anyway, yeah, that was pretty crazy, and he had just learning things about like the fiddle and all of that was so good. And the coolest part was we would do everything kind of, it was a spot kind of like this. He had built a studio in his house. It was an old moose lodge, and you go up this windy road, and you're like, you feel like you are outside of civilization, and he's got acres and acres and acres.
Is that just outside of Nashville?
Yeah, it's like Charlotte Pike area, just on the west side. Damn. And at night he would have moonshine, moon pies, and RC Cola, and you would hear some of the most amazing musicians just jamming. We'd have a fire, they'd just be playing by the fire. And then at sunset, we would go out, and there was a big fire tower. And so we would climb the fire tower, watch the sunset. Then his wife would have a big meal ready, for dinner. And we'd all sit by this, huge table. It was, the most picturesque recording session, especially for bluegrass music, that you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. Bluegrass is definitely vibe oriented.
Oh, yeah. And it was just, everyone felt so relaxed. And he was the master of just letting it happen, and getting great sounds and providing the direction. And so I learned a ton from him, and it was very really cool, man. Really incredible.
And so you went into it. You do play guitar too, though, right?
I do. I hesitate to say that in this town because the guitar players are just unbelievable. But I can hold my own if I'm given time. And I it's still fun to play.
Yeah. I've heard that so many times. Like I don't call myself a guitar player in Nashville, and I'm always like, oh, come on, everybody.
Yeah, I know. I need to man up
enjoy
here.
it. It's ain't about the fact that there's somebody who's brilliant. There's always going to be Andre Segovia every time you pick up like a nylon string guitar. And
that's true.
I think I said his name right, didn't I?
I don't know. I'm
the famous classical guitarist,
right?
that I'll never sound as good as. But yeah, so no, that's cool, man. So then, any other acoustic instruments you remember learning cool ways to record them?
Yeah.
How about upright bass? That must have been an important thing, or not?
Upright bass. Yeah, I'm trying to remember back. I was taking notes like crazy. I remember he would record at Masterlink Studios, but I think if I remember, I think he had like an EV. It was kind of, it had kind of a ball. The diaphragm was kind of like on a ball, and it was adjustable.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I know he used that, and probably a DI or something. But I'm not
D25 or AKG. No, you said it was an EV.
I think it was an EV. Yeah.
Well, somebody was listening. I was like, "Come on, guys!
You got it.
Something or other." So
I could be totally wrong. Like this is a long time ago, and I'm just kind of like I can picture it in my head.
Well, that's all right. We keep rolling. I mean, you've the important takeaway was the stereo guitar miking that you do.
Yeah, that's the big thing. And there was one other thing. And I hope I'm not giving away any of his trade secrets here or anything, but fiddle, he would always put a piece of gaff tape on like the space between the bridge and the tailpiece, and that took away the honkiness.
Oh wow!
It was
of a fiddle.
Yeah,
amazing. I have a fiddle. I just got my bow I bought a new bow.
Yeah,
and I'll probably re-recording again. So I'm going to have to try that trick.
Try it. I did
so
that.
It runs on one side of the fiddle from the bridge down to where the neck.
It just goes across. Where there's the bridge, and then you have the neck, and there's that little
area of wood underneath between.
Yeah, and you just put it on the strings. Put it on the string over top of the string.
Oh, I see. It's almost like a dampener on the non-played side of the string.
Exactly.
Just past the bridge.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I don't know why. I don't know what it does, but man, it works.
That's cool. That's great. What a good trick. All right. I'm excited to try that.
Yeah. There you go.
All right.
Sorry, Bill.
And then you went on from recording with Bill. What was your next?
So oddly enough, the first day that I was working with Bill, he was doing, those old Tascam 8-track DA88s and 98s and stuff. So he was doing transfers for, what's his name? Jerry Douglas, the dobro player. He was doing transfers, and Chuck Ainlay was mixing it. So my very first day, and I was so awkward because I was so nervous. I had seen Chuck's name and I had pictures in this book. It was called Young Guns. And so I was like, oh man, this is Chuck Ainlay. This is amazing. So I was sitting there, and so I kind of met him and I kind of knew him. And so I thought, for my second internship, I think I'd like to work with Chuck. That'd be great.
So first of all, let me preface this by saying you're a smart man to already be thinking about a quote second internship. Because I've heard people, I've worked with students who have done internships today, and some of them just, I think that an internship is just a requirement, a school requirement. And
that is school.
That is exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, every time you're interning, you do have the potential to have a door open to you that wouldn't have been opened before.
Absolutely.
And you can be in a new place, learning new stuff and meeting new people, which is pretty great.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the time that that you can absorb so much. Like that's your job, is to absorb and then help them out. And so, and that's your payment, is getting to learn from a master. So, always, this is one of the big takeaways, I think, if you're starting out, is to, when you're in the studio with someone, you have to pay attention. You have to learn. You are absorbing all of the cool things, and you don't have to use everything that they do. You might not like, so-and-so's snare sound or so-and-so's kick sound or whatever, but the way they do it, the way they approach it, all of those philosophies you can use in your own recording. So going back to how I got in with Chuck, so I remembered that, and then at the end I was conflicted because I liked Bill so much, and it was amazing. It was almost like a Mr. Miyagi sort of experience. It was great. I loved it, but I knew I needed something. I needed a different experience for the second internship. So I just cold called Chuck, and so I called Soundstage, and I said, "Hey, this is Justin calling for Chuck Ainlay," and they're like, "Okay, we'll put you through." I was like, "Wow, that was really easy." And so he picks up and he goes, "Hey, Justin, how you doing?" I'm like, "Hey, he remembers me. This is amazing." Well, he thought I was Justin Niebank.
Oh, that's funny.
I was not Justin Niebank. No, I was some idiot intern, sitting there. And so I kind of had to awkwardly explain the situation. And he's like, he thought about it for a second. He thought, I don't ever have an intern. I never do internships. I was like, please? And he said, okay, I'll give you a shot. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Man.
And so I called up, and then I called MTSU and said, hey, he said, yes, could I do this? And they made it happen. And
they were like, you got the Chuck Ainlay internship?
Yeah. And this is just me being just ignorant as to how difficult that should have been, and
but that helps. That's what I did too. I just picked up the phone and called Brad Jones over at Alex the Great, because he was the producer on the name of the record that I thought sounded amazing.
Yeah. And he
happened to answer, and I got to talk to him, and it was like, all of it was so unlikely,
Yeah. And that's another thing. You just never know. So put yourself out there, give it a shot. I gave him a call, and he said, sure, let's give it a shot. So
what'd you do when you were interning for Chuck?
So at first, he had a tray of, he liked tea and some snacks. So I would make sure that he always had, hot water and tea, and, the snacks were arranged nicely. And then, sometimes it would be a cold drink. And so I'd have ice, and it would kind of sweat, all the little internship things. And so I'd make sure that it was clean, and, I'd have to label some masters if he was printing, some masters, label those and everything. So, a lot of times it was just sitting there and being completely quiet, like I wasn't there. Yeah. Which do not disturb. And that does not come naturally to me. Like if there's silence and I'm with someone, then I want to break that silence, but it was a great learning experience. So young guys, if you're starting out and interning, say nothing.
I don't think they do this in schools like at MTSU when they teach people how to be an intern.
Mm-hmm.
But they should bring all the students that want to be interns into a classroom and just, or like the intern coordinator, which I think is Dan Pfeiffer now. Hey, Dan.
Yeah. Hey,
Dan should invite the students to come into the office and go, I'm going to give you your first lesson on interning. I'm going to work and you just sit there quietly. And
that would be great.
For like half an hour.
Yeah.
And if they can do that, then they're ready to intern.
Yeah. Seriously. Because it is.
Or you say like, Dan, this is a message to you. Or you sit there for half an hour and see if you can figure out what I might need before I need it, but don't interrupt me.
Yes. Well, that is what got me the job at Soundstage. That last point that you just said. So, I think I was actually not the best intern until, I was trying to do, whatever, keep the tray going and try to think ahead. And I had made a mistake labeling some tapes. He had done a new version, a new revision, and I didn't write DNU on the master.
What is DNU? Oh, do not use. Yeah, right.
Or mark it in some way that they would know that was the previous pass was not the one to master. It was the next one, which also was a very important thing. And I just didn't know. And I got reamed for that because that could have been a very big mistake.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of in the doghouse, and I was thinking about what I could do to kind of get back into his better graces. And this is so silly, but it made all of the difference. In his lounge, there was a freezer with an ice maker, but they had the wrong bucket to catch the ice. So it would always spill all over the floor. And so I just called up, I found the model number and I found the customer service number, and I called them up, and, I had them on hold, and I was trying to order that part. I said, Chuck, I popped my head in. I said, I'm on the phone with, GE or whoever made it, to get a new ice bucket for you. It's going to be, $25. Is that okay? And he looked and he was puzzled. He goes, yeah, that would be great. And he handed me his credit card. And so I took care of it. And from then on, that changed everything. And he got me a job at Soundstage, which is how I got the night manager position. And the rest, just kind of snowballed from there.
That's great, man. What a great story. I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk about interning forever, but there are plenty of people who are listening who are at that stage would like, how do I get into a studio? How do I get something going? And, hearing you describe what your tasks were they, in fact, the only engineering task you did, you totally screwed up and got chewed out for. Everything else is like, what can you do probably with no training other than hopefully some, common sense life training? Well, you can probably, hopefully make sure that, the food and drink and stuff and snacks are ready to go, and that the dishes are clean.
Yeah.
And that the bathroom's not gross, and it's just nice, that it feels like a nice place. Hopefully our moms taught us that, growing up kind of thing. And then, you can find something that looks like it could be better and try and leave the place better than you found it. And that's a really important lesson, because I think sometimes, somebody who's going to intern can walk into a studio and they see things that are a little rickety, or they're not quite, all the way there. And they just think like, oh, that's an old funky place or something. That's like, no, like a moment ago, that was a brand new thing that is getting, used and in a studio environment, and things, entropy happens in studios. It takes proactively trying to organize, make it nicer, make it cleaner, make it better. Yeah. That's how studios are really nice. I mean, of course, when they're brand new, they look pretty shiny, but that doesn't last too long. Even
brand new studios need, things happen, and it happens quickly. Someone bumps into a thing, or, kicks a door stop. When I was the night manager at Soundstage, I wore a Leatherman Yeah, I looked like a dork, but I didn't care.
Did you have a cell phone holder on your hip?
I had like the Batman belt, you know,
a BlackBerry.
Yeah, BlackBerry, grappling hook, all that stuff. But the Leatherman, it was perfect because I just those little things like the doorstop came off, so I just fixed it right there. Or someone had an issue with this, I could just fix it. I had pliers, and Chuck had got me one of those headlamps.
Oh, I love the headlamps.
Oh, it was the best gift ever. I still have it, and so yeah, just being able to fix those problems as soon as they happen or before makes all the difference in the world, and that increases your value as an engineer tenfold.
Yeah. Recording Studio Rockstars Academy is the place you can go to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level. And you can start right now with my free Introduction to Mixing course, Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is that these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you are in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything else. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to Mix Master Bundle to get started for free now, or look for the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. So, yeah, great. Awesome. Well, so how long were you at Soundstage? And can you describe what Soundstage Studios is like as a place?
Soundstage,
it's still in existence now? Or
yeah. And it's, I think it's better than ever now. So when I was there, it was right at the point where Napster and MP3, this was 2002 to 2004. So I was there for about 2 years. And we had the main Soundstage campus, which had 3, 4, like 5 studios in it. And then we had a place called Blueberry Hill, which is now the Ruckus Room. Jamie Tate works out of there. We had 2 rooms over there, and then we had the Groove Room and a little place called Double Take. So they had 2 rooms.
So it was really a collection of studios.
Yeah. And as the night manager, I was in charge of setups for all of them.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And I would start at 4:30 at night, and you'd have to wait until everyone would get finished, because I might have 2 or 3 interns, or I might just have 1 or none. And so I'd have to do everything by myself and do all the setups and turn the rooms, clean the rooms, and all of that. It was exhausting, but it was one of those learning experiences where you had to do everything. If you ran into a problem at 3 a.m., you couldn't call someone and say, "Hey, what's up?" You had to figure it out.
So were you actually setting up mics and stands for sessions?
Yeah, they would send me a setup sheet.
And was it just you, or did you have a staff under you to do stuff?
I would have maybe an intern or 2. So it was great for them, because they
were driving around town from studio to studio in the middle of the night
with a rickety old van and a bunch of mics in it, and Q boxes, those old Q8s, and mic stands and all that stuff, and just trying to get everything to work. And it was one of those things where if there were a few tracking sessions, we'd have to borrow some pieces. So before all of the other studios closed down, you had to make sure that you could borrow a couple of Q8s or some 414s or something like that. And Quad was great, and Cardi Day, and all the ones around town, Emerald. They'd always help out, and we'd help them out if they needed, which was really cool. But yeah, it was a lot of work, and intense, for not a lot of money.
Yeah, I'll bet, man. It's funny because now I'm looking at my own intern experience, and I was offered a night job, and I turned it down because I interpreted it as, want you to come in at about midnight and fix stuff till 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
And maybe I would have felt differently about it if it had been setting up for sessions. I would have felt like I was participating in the music making somehow.
I feel like some of the engineers who gave the setups to the assistant thought that the assistant was going to do it.
Right.
And then the engineer would leave, and the assistant would come and say, "Hey, here, I need this set up by 8 a.m." And so, yeah, it was a really good learning experience, but probably it would have been great if it was a little less to do. And also, every time because we were moving Pro Tools rigs around, it was right when HD had come out. So there was only 1 HD rig, or maybe 2, and then, a bunch of the old 888 rigs. And so we'd always calibrate before a mix session, always calibrate the inputs and outputs.
Right.
And,
with the little Phillips head screwdriver on the front of the unit.
Yeah. Well, it was great for the 888s. Those were awesome because they were on the front. And then the HDs, as you know, the 192s.
You have to go in the back and with a tweaker.
Oh, it was terrible. So, yeah. And then our motto was always, when you turn the room for a new client, it had to look like Mix Magazine, like the cover of Mix Magazine. So you had to vacuum all the walls, vacuum, the console and all of that. So
let's clarify that. Vacuuming the walls is because we have so much fabric on the walls, right?
Yes. And there are some vents behind it, some, so air returns.
Pull the dirt and dust toward the wall.
Especially if there was incense or whatever happening in there, they would get dirty. So you'd have to vacuum all of that. And, but anyway, that experience, as painful as it was awesome.
What are some of the things that you remember learning about the different kinds of setups, or did you discover that mostly people did the same setups for sessions?
Yes, there were some things that were pretty standard, D112 in the kick or the Beta 52, which is one that I prefer. But I learned that from doing the setups, and 57 on snare. And a lot of people would use the 421s on toms. And then I did a setup for someone that used 414s, and I heard the end product and I thought, man, that sounds great. So I started using 414s on my own sessions, and I love 414s on toms. Those are my favorite. But some guys did top and bottom mics with a special cable that reversed the phase for the bottom.
Oh, right. So let's describe that. I'd seen that too, and I built one once to experiment with it. But it is basically saying, well, if we're going to put a 57 on top of a snare and a 57 on the bottom, let's have them both go into one Y cable mic. Yeah. So it's a single output where the phase gets flipped. Yeah. Right there. And you just record one track, but it's really top and bottom equal levels, I guess.
Yeah. So personally, I wouldn't do it on the snare, but I saw it on toms a lot. And I personally haven't tried that, but I kind of keep it in the back of my head.
Yeah, but what a cool idea, because one of the challenges with double miking toms, which I have done, I think the only place we ever did it was with Steve Albini, and it really did sound pretty amazing. Yeah. And I was like, that sounds great, And then, of course, it's occasionally or other times I'm like, why don't I do that again? Mm-hmm. But, usually the answer is because it's just a lot of tracks and you're trying to cut down on tracks. I guess technically if it's only a 4-piece drum kit, it's only 2 more tracks. But right. Still, but that's a cool trick. The Y cable for the top and bottom of the tom means you don't need extra tracks for your toms. You're just getting double mics on it.
Yeah. So,
and what mics? Those would probably be with the 421s, not with the 414s. You can't do that trick with condensers. I don't think. Right.
Yeah.
Maybe
unless you had maybe a phantom power supply that you could feed to both in between.
Oh, right, and then do the trick on the way back.
Yeah. I don't know.
I do have one of those supplies.
Well, there you go. Give it a shot. Let us know.
All right, cool. Any other stuff with setup? You remember where it was like a light bulb moment for you?
There were a few room placements. One of the engineers said that he'd like to, kind of put the rooms so that they face away from the cymbals, so they get more of the wash and less of the crash, which I always thought was pretty cool. One of the best.
And how far away do you think those mics were from the actual drum kit?
This was probably 10, 15 feet or so.
Right. And it was probably in cardioid mode?
Yeah. Yeah. These were 4033s, so they would have been in cardioid. So I thought that was always cool. I always think about that when I'm placing my room mics. But then the biggest thing, and I was just at this session. This is many years later. I was just watching Tal Hirschberg do a setup, and this was in Henson Studio B, which is an amazing room, and he used, a pair of C12s as overheads. We actually did 2 sessions, and this was great because one session he used a pair of C12s as the overheads, and the second session he used a pair of 67s, And so I got to hear the difference. It was the same drummer. It was Abel Boreal Jr., who is a monster. He's Paul McCartney's drummer. And he's out of this world. But I got to hear that setup. So we had, C12s as overheads, and then kind of a standard drum miking, close mic setup. And then he had a mono mic about halfway down through the room, and it was a ribbon, and he put it down all the way almost at the floor. So it was like right at the kick level.
Right.
And then he had a pair of rooms, back behind. And I've kind of copied a similar setup ever since. And having that low mono room is just so cool because it's not getting a lot of the wash from the cymbals,
right?
But it's getting a lot,
And there's all the low end is accumulating at the boundary of the floor too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And that then, when you go to crush it, then the kick is triggering the compression. And so you get this really cool pumping that's triggered by the kick.
Nice.
It just makes it sound huge. And
so do you use a Coles 4038 for that or something? Or
I've used, in the past, I haven't used a Coles, but a 121 or a 122 Royer.
Right.
They sound great. And then, I've used an RCA 77, and that sounded pretty cool. And then recently, just a few months ago, I used an M249, and it was in cardioid, and it sounded amazing.
And that's not a ribbon, right? Or
no.
Is it? That's a condenser, right?
That's
it's a tube mic.
Yeah, tube condenser. And I mean, that's one of the greatest mics.
How far away do you feel like that mic needs to be? If you're about to record drums in a different studio, how big of a room do you picture where that miking works well for you?
So this last session that I did I would say it was about maybe 10 feet, not super far, kind of a medium distance away. But
we're talking about big room spaces. For drums.
Yeah. But I think you could get away with it being closer. Because
do you have much experience recording drums in home studio environments?
I've done it a few times. Actually, a lot of the Hollywood Vampires was more of we did it at Johnny Depp's house.
Oh man, we got to get into that. Tell us a little bit about the drum technique, and then we'll circle back to really dig into that one too. Okay,
cool. So, as far as drum technique regarding the session.
Well, yeah, you were saying that was a home studio environment.
Oh,
right?
yeah. So that was a home studio environment, and so it was, kind of renegade, using all kind of mismatched outboard pre's and stuff, and then just whatever was available on drums. So it was a similar setup, and everyone played in one room, not a whole lot of isolation or anything. So I think I'm trying to remember exactly, but I think it was just a few feet away, the mono room.
All right, cool. So basically, we should try that trick even in our home studios.
Yeah, give it a shot. Well, I mean, if you're recording on Pro Tools or any sort of DAW where you have unlimited tracks, and if you have an available mic and mic pre, give it a shot.
Yeah,
I'm all about that. Get the clean stuff, get your overheads, get your close mics, get your snare, kick, all that. But then also, have some fun mics, have some color in there too. I mean, you can always mute it. It doesn't cost anything to record it or mute it. So have it as an option. There was one time I was just walking through an isolation booth, and they had a pass through. I think this was at Sienna Studios, which used to be Quad. And I passed by it. I heard the drums coming through the pass through the PVC pipe. And I thought, man, that sounds incredible. That's a good sound, yeah. And I didn't record it at that time because we were just moving so quickly, and we'd already, done several songs like that. But this new studio that we have, it's got a few pass-throughs to it. So that's going to be one of my things. I'm going to put a mic right in that PVC, and who knows, it could be awesome.
That's cool, man. I love experimenting with stuff like that. And you really do have to give yourself the breathing room to experiment like that, because it is hard to do when you're under pressure.
Yeah.
But you notice it. But then if you can just hold on to that, maybe have a little notepad where you're writing down notes of things you want to try later, then come back and like explore it and see. I recently learned, a couple of great drum miking techniques from Vance Powell about adding some distortion mics into the kit. And now I'm doing, and I've heard other people talk about it too. John Finnell just talked about it. In fact, about doing, a mic that's kind of the mono soul mic where it's just right above the kick and right next to the side of the snare. And so it's in the midst of all the drum shells.
Yeah.
And that one, using the Dr. Alien Smith Dirt mic, which is it's a bullet mic with built-in distortion circuit. And so you stick that in right in the middle of the drum kit. That sounds awesome.
And then make a note of that myself.
Yeah. And then I just been doing the SM58. We did that down at Bonnaroo. Just tape it on the floor, sort of down on the hi-hat side, and I don't know whether that's even critical, sort of at the bottom of the stool over a little bit. And then that one goes through a Sans amp, and then you can kind of dial in what kind of tone seems to fit.
That's awesome.
With the drum kit,
I had an engineer who, this is when I was assisting or doing whatever. I was not engineering, but he said, you know what? Fun mic. I'm going to turn around, close my eyes, or leave the room. Pick any mic you want, put it anywhere. I don't want to know where it is. I don't want to know what it is, and just make it sound nasty. And so that's kind of a fun thing to do with your assistant and say, okay, man, do something. Have fun.
But I do feel like, and then afterwards, when it does sound good, good Lord, please take a photograph of it so we remember where it was.
Yes, remember it. Good point. Good point.
Awesome. All right, well, let's take a break for just a sec. We'll come back in for the jam session. Rockstars, a reminder that we've got links to all the stuff we're talking about here with Justin Corky Cortelyou in the show notes. So just click through on your mobile device or go to rsrockstars.com and find the blog article right there. And then in the bottom, usually we have links to stuff. That's sometimes where we'll include, that's always where we include the YouTube playlist. So we've got a playlist ready for you to just go click through and listen to all Justin's work. And then also we'll have links to his website. Sometimes we throw extra photos in there and diagrams if we remember to do so. So we'll see you guys in just a minute for the jam session. It was 1971 in a New York City basement when Eventide revolutionized the audio world by introducing the world's first studio effects processor, the Instant Phaser, and the first digital effect, the H910 Harmonizer. Eventide soon followed with the Instant Flanger, Omnipressor, SP2016 Reverb, and H949 and H3000 Harmonizers, which have been favorites of A-list mixers like Michael Brower, Joe Ciccarelli, Mick Guzowski, and Dave Pensato, and heard on countless hit records over the decades. Today, Eventide brings all that sound to your stage and studio with modern solutions like the H9000 Harmonizer, their complete line of guitar pedals, including the versatile H9 Max, and transformative plugins like Micropitch, Physion, Black Hole, and Mangled Reverb. Take your next mix in your studio to a whole new level. Go to eventide.com or click the link in the show notes below. Are you sick of bothering family and neighbors when you're just trying to rehearse or record your music? Do outside noises or computer fans get into your studio mics and ruin your recordings? You could book a pro studio to record every time, but that would add up quickly, and doing permanent construction to soundproof your studio can easily cost up to $100,000 or more. Trust me, I know. And you can't take that with you when you eventually move the studio. Don't you wish there was an easy solution right now? Whisper ISO Booths offers a simple way to install a comfortable, quiet, ventilated ISO booth in your studio with easy line of sight for recording vocals, guitar amps, or even drums in a variety of sizes. For 30 years, Whisper has been solving studio isolation needs worldwide with ISO booths that are shippable, portable, and can be assembled in an afternoon. Now you can get pro vocal recordings right in your home studio, practice whenever you want, and start using real guitar amps again. Get 10% off the 4x4 or 4x6 booths when you mention Recording Studio Rockstars at whisperroom.com or click the link in the show notes below. Are you using a Mac in your recording studio? Are you tired of feeling like the studio setup you worked so hard to create is becoming obsolete too quickly? Wouldn't it feel great to have a trusted friend to help you keep your existing Mac and studio setup current and relevant so that you can focus on the thing you love most, which is making great music? Well, now you can rely on OWC, Otherworld Computing, which you can find at OWC.com, whose mission it is to help you get the most mileage out of your Mac. Whether you need to upgrade your RAM, install an SSD, add more connectivity, or simply find a great used Mac that's ready to rock, OWC will help take your studio far into the future with a vast library of DIY install videos, 24/7 friendly support, and free shipping in the US on most items over $49. Why get frustrated and ditch your existing computer when you can take your studio far into the future with OWC? Learn more at OWC.com and find out how awesome your Mac can be at OWC. Hey, rock stars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest is Justin Corky Cortelyou, joining us here at the Toy Box to talk about making some badass records. We're going to get into a bunch of mixing questions here too.
Awesome.
But first, let me go to ask you, well, first I'll ask you, you ready to jam, dude?
Oh, I'm ready to jam.
All
Let's
right,
bring it on.
Sweet. So tell us about this working with Johnny Depp, the Hollywood Vampires. What is Hollywood Vampires?
So the Hollywood Vampires was actually originally a drinking club that Alice Cooper started, and it took place at the, I believe it was the Whiskey. It was on the Sunset Strip this would have been the 70s, you know. So it was like Mickey Dolenz and Harry Nilsson and Keith Moon and, you know, I think John Lennon was in it. Like all these amazing artists, they would just go into this secret room, and it was later than they were supposed to be open. Or they would just sit and drink and have a good time. And so Alice had this, I guess he had met Johnny on the set of Dark Shadows, and they were talking and got to be really good friends. And they decided to make this band called the Hollywood Vampires. And
That's
Alice
awesome.
had this idea to do a covers record, and it would be an ode to his quote unquote dead drunk friends. And
Wow.
so that was the starting point. And then Bob Ezrin was the producer, and it started off kind of small. We did one tracking session out at the Village Recorder in LA, which was pretty amazing. And it was a lot of his live band, and then Johnny Depp playing, and then it kind of snowballed into this thing where we got, you know, we were doing these overdub sessions at Johnny Depp's house, and which was awesome. One of his houses.
No doubt, dude.
He has all the
and
houses.
This is when you were living in LA.
No, I was living here. This is in, would have been like 2014 or so.
Working with Bob Ezrin already,
Yes.
and this was sort of how that came all about?
Yeah. So and I had already been working with Bob for several years, and we had done a few Alice Cooper things.
Let's also
that.
pause and inject this little story. The first time I met you was actually when you were maybe had just kind of started doing stuff with Bob Ezrin.
Yes.
And I was selling my Neve 1079
yeah.
and I needed, I sold that in the rack, and that was enough to get me through a month or two or something like that.
Yeah.
And it got, maybe it was on Craigslist and you found it.
Yeah, that's right.
There you were being a great helper.
Yeah, I was being a great helper.
I found you a great ice bucket and a 1079, a 1079 vintage.
Well, it's still being used, and that mic pre has been used on, Brian Johnson, Kesha, you name it.
Oh, that's awesome. That makes me so much. That makes me really happy. I don't think I was going to record Kesha here through it when it was in my studio. So.
Yeah, we had to clean it up afterwards, but anyway, so so we were doing overdubs at Johnny Depp's place, which was incredible, and so Johnny owns a bunch of different houses on the block. And that's kind of his sanctuary, so he doesn't get bombarded. He just bought
the whole cul-de-sac.
Yeah, pretty much. And they're all like super cool buildings. And
does he really go trim all the bushes with Edward Scissorhands on?
Yep. Yep, that's him.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Man.
he kept those. So anyway, Joe Perry was just staying in one of his, guest houses. And so we'd be recording and Joe would just come in and, shirtless and just lay on the couch and hang out. He'd be like, "Hey, Joe Perry, what are you doing today?" And so eventually he started playing on, some of the songs, which was awesome. And then made a phone call and then we'd be there and Johnny and Marilyn Manson are big. They're really close friends, been friends for years. So he came over and he sang on a song and that was incredible. And
did he come dressed? Were these guys dressed in full regalia when you would record too?
I wish. I wish.
Not always.
No,
sometimes.
Yeah. Joe Perry pretty much just looks like
just
Joe.
Looks like Joe.
Yeah, he's Joe. But I'm trying to think who else. We had Joe Walsh come in, which was amazing.
Right on.
He was incredible. And so it would just be these things where...
And he sang or played guitar?
He just played guitar.
And what was that like?
It didn't just play guitar. Well, here's the crazy thing. So here's Joe Walsh, one of the greatest guitarists of all time. And the first guitar he pulls out is a V. It's a Fernandez V. Like, I mean, it just, to me, looked like the cheapest guitar ever. I'm like, are you kidding? We're at Johnny's place and he's got like the best of the best collector's edition, anything you want, like just hanging on the walls. The place is covered in guitars. And I'm like, grab any of these and it's going to be better. It's like, no, this is great. And he plays and the tone is incredible. Like, it's him, and then he gets to another song and he brings out this like cheap Mexican made Strat. I'm like, oh, come on, man.
That's hilarious.
Just whatever. And it's again, the best thing you've ever heard. And so it's all like all of the tone, all of the texture and finesse is all in his fingers.
What about the amp? Were you still using cool amps, or was there anything about the miking and recording that you remember?
It honestly was what was set up, and I think it was a Morgan amp because that's what Joe was using, Joe Perry, and I think an SM7 on the cab.
SM7 on the cab?
I love the SM7 on the cab.
Oh,
if you
that's
haven't
great.
used it,
Good tip.
It's fantastic.
I don't think I've put an SM7 on a guitar cab in ages.
Yeah, that's kind of what I always do that. I put the SM7 on just off of the surround, and I'll do a Royer 121 or 122 closer to the cone and kind of blend the two and sum them together because I hate those extra tracks like we were talking about.
So SM7, when you say closer to the surround, you mean like the edge of the speaker itself?
Yes. Yeah, the edge of the speaker. It's a little warmer. And then because the Royer, and this is just my thinking, this isn't gospel or anything, but the 121 or 122, because it's a little bit darker, it can take a little bit more of the kind of high end presence that comes closer to the
totally.
to the cone. So
because an SM57 can get a little bit bright when you get close to the middle.
Yeah. So that's just kind of been my standard setup. Like that's my starting point ever since, and I just really like it. And then usually I'm on in town. We have a lot of SSL 9000s. The new studio that we've built has a 4000E, so it's great because I can take the small faders and kind of do my blend on the fly, and then I bust it out to one channel and just record one track because I do not like having more tracks.
Me neither.
Just simplify and be done with it.
That's what I do too here with the MCI console, which by the way has also recorded Joe Walsh.
What do you know?
Yeah, the Smoker You Get, that album.
Oh, that's awesome.
He did that. Just came down from Criteria, and of course, it recorded Joe Walsh on Hotel California. That board did Hotel California for the Eagles down at Studio C.
That's stupid.
So my point is that I will do the same thing. If I can, I'll take multiple mics and I'll run them through a couple of faders, just get the blend at the console, and then record that to one track because it's a cool sound too.
Yeah. And when you get the sound you like, why chase that?
Yeah, why would you want to go fuck it up later?
Yeah, exactly. So especially if it's going to someone else to mix, just don't give them the option to fuck it up.
Yeah, good point.
So anyway, that's I think it was just an SM7 on his on that rig. Anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it was or wasn't. That was a great takeaway tip to use an SM7 now.
Yeah, well, there you go.
We'll be trying it.
Yeah, and with Joe Walsh, I mean, really, you could mic it with a shoelace and a piece of gum, and it would sound great. That's
shoelace and a piece of gum.
Yeah, that's my next tip. Try a shoelace and a piece of gum into a Neve, and that's.
Now, does the gum go first or the shoelace go first?
Try out and see what sounds good.
Cool. So Johnny Depp, what a trip! And so, what was he doing in the project? Was he singing on stuff as well?
On this record, he just played guitar, and he's a pretty decent guitar player. Kind of has a slinky, bluesy kind of like Keith Richards style, and such a cool guy. I mean, he just wants to be around music all the time.
That's great.
And like, he's seemed a little shy at first. I think he was just kind of guarded at first until you kind of enter that circle of trust, and then he was just so cool to hang out with, and such a like I could not find a bad thing to say about him.
How long were you there working on it?
This all took place, I think, over the course of a year and a half. So it would be like, a weekend here, or 5 days here and 5 days there, and we did. I wasn't there for Robbie Krieger or Dave Grohl, which kills me. Because that would have been so cool. The same way. Oh man, but.
I can't wait to meet Dave one day.
Oh man, that would be awesome. I've heard he's a great guy too.
I'm sure he's a super genuine dude.
Yeah, and what a talent, man. But yeah, so that was awesome. So they flew me in for vocals for Perry Farrell. He ended up, or as they call him, Peripheral.
Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction.
Yes.
Nice.
Which was incredible. I mean, that guy.
Did you have to do like the required delay thing, the Jane's Addiction effect?
Yeah, it was on there. Just I didn't print it.
What is that effect? It's like delay or something.
Yeah. Oh, I just put a delay, like an Echo Boy delay on there, and I can't. I don't know what the repeats were, but I just threw something up real quick. Right. But he was a total rock star. First of all, he showed up 7 hours late. I'm just sitting there going, like, because I flew in, I took the morning flight. I was taking the red eye back because I had just moved, and my son was really young, and so I just couldn't get away. My whole family was painting the inside of the house, and I was the one jerk who had to leave and go record Perry Farrell.
Right, right.
They don't know who he is. So, but me, I was so excited because he was so cool. And man, he was a rock star. Talk about a rock star. Like we had an SM7 on his vocal, and he just like picked up the microphone, and this is in the studio, and he was spinning around. He was jumping. It was like he was on stage. And it was awesome. The best thing ever. And I was only there for like to get the sound and the levels and stuff. And we did like 2 passes or so. I was like, all right, guys, I got to go. And yeah, that was incredible. But the best day was when Paul McCartney came. That was like, first of all, so I woke up to a text that said, congratulations, Jared Neiman's song just hit #1. It was either #1 or it was platinum. One of the two, both like, it was #1. He was #1. So I woke up, I was in the hotel room. I was like, that's incredible. Blown away. And then I took a shower, got dressed, and walked up to Johnny Depp's house to set up for Paul McCartney. And I mean, just saying that sentence is just weird and doesn't seem like it should have happened, but it did. And yeah, so it was Abel Boreal Jr. on drums. Paul McCartney went down with a scratch vocal and piano. It was like there was a shitty upright piano, and the only mic left was a PZM, just mono PZM. So put that in there and close the top, which it was a little difficult to get. You can't get a good sound. Oh, this is
doing the closed lid piano thing. Yeah. So that, did you tape the PZM to the inside of the lid and close the lid? Is it like that? Do you remember how you did that?
I can't remember exactly, but I want to say it wasn't to the lid, but there was some space above the sound bar. I think.
And so it's like resting on.
It was
harp
taped
itself,
in there.
taped.
I don't think it wasn't to the harp itself, but it was. So maybe it was the lid.
Because I've tried experimenting with stuff like that, and you can tape PZMs to a grand piano lid and then just close the lid, and you can get some isolation.
Right.
If there's a drum kit in there or anything, but it's always tricky to figure out how to tape them and stuff like that.
Yeah, and this was like this whole thing. It just happened to be that he was in town, and he was at a break for rehearsals because he was playing a show, or maybe he was just rehearsing for his tour or something, but he happened to have a day. And so it was like everyone scurrying around. And so a lot of it's a blur, and a lot of it was stuff was already set up, and let's just use that because we don't have any time to waste with Paul McCartney.
Totally.
It's working. We'll make it sound good later.
Yeah.
And so that was just, let's plug it in and let's figure it out later, and it was, like I said, totally renegade style. We used up every mic pre that we had there, but the band on the floor was Abe, and Paul was playing guitar or playing piano and singing, and then Joe Perry was playing guitar. Johnny Depp was playing guitar. Alice Cooper was singing background vocals.
So now, did you get a sense from the musicians themselves on the floor that was there like a sense that Paul was, that they were thrilled to be playing with Paul, or did it feel like a very even playing field amongst all those folks? Or like, what was did you pick up on that kind of vibe at all?
Well,
I mean, if I was in that room, I'd just been like, like, I'm not worthy. There was there, of course.
Like everyone, when they were playing, it was fine. They were just figuring out the parts and stuff. But I remember walking through, so the studio is in what would have been that house's garage. So just kind of treated and everything. And so you come out of the garage, through the kitchen, through a little bar area, and into the living room, which is the control room. And so I passed by Johnny in the bar area, and he goes, "Dude, can you believe it? Paul McCartney's here at my house." I'm like,
so awesome.
Yeah, I'm at your house. And Paul McCartney, like he was just as like blown away as I was. And I'm like, I grew up in a, coal mining town in Western Pennsylvania,
That's so awesome.
Couldn't believe that I was in the same room as all of these people. It was just unbelievable. And that was really one of the only sessions where I got a little bit starstruck, because I mean, it's Paul McCartney. He invented music.
What were some of the things you remember just listening to them play together about the musicianship that was happening right there? Did anything strike you?
Abel Boyle Jr. was he was so musical, and he really helped to communicate ideas between all of the musicians and stuff. And
right. So he sort of became de facto band director in a way, right? And then Paul's used to playing with Abe.
Yeah.
So he's comfortable in the pocket and the groove, and Paul had the song.
Yeah. So the song was Come and Get It.
Just listen to that one.
Yeah. Which Paul had written to be on a Beatles record. He wanted it to be on a Beatles record, but it never made it. And so he, then Badfinger used it, and I think it was a #1 for Badfinger.
That's right.
And he never recorded it.
Badfinger was on Apple Records.
You're right. And so
that's not Apple computers, rock stars.
Look it up. Yeah. So he'd always wanted to record it. So this was kind of like Paul's, not dream. I mean, he has, but he wanted to do it so badly. So, here was his opportunity, and it was just so
this was
cool.
like one of the first times that Paul recorded Come and Get It?
I think so.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I remember the song, and I knew it was his, but I had forgotten that it was Badfinger is why I knew it.
Yeah.
What a trip. Yeah. Do your history. I mean, do your homework, Lidge.
Yeah. Well, I haven't looked into it, so maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's the first time.
But you got a sense that they were excited about the chance.
Yeah, that's what I was told was that
Well,
this
somebody
was
will
his
correct
first
us, and rockstars always feel free to drop a comment in somewhere and set us straight.
Yes. So anyway, it was incredible. And so they, did several rehearsals, passes, and then we did some vocals after that. And that was amazing. So, Bob Ezrin was actually in the room with him, kind of, giving him ideas, like sitting next to him with headphones on. Bob's very hands-on. And so he just sang a few passes down, and it was Paul McCartney. Come on. It was pretty incredible. And then after he did his main pass, he said, you know what? I want to do a mad guy and just have him scream the whole song. And so, in Oh Darlin', when he's like really screaming, like it was that voice throughout the whole song at a different, you'll hear it on the recording, a different, kind of a different style, he's not matching his original vocal at all, like the phrasing and all of that. So kind of offset. And I think he's panned off to the left or something. That's
what I wanted to ask you about. Is one of my questions was on a session like that with so many different voices going on. How did you make decisions? I guess you already told us that the mics you were using were probably like the mics you had.
Right.
So you didn't overthink that. But what about the placement, because they're panned out and they have different qualities to them, and some sit forward, some sit back, stuff like that.
So when I'm mixing, especially vocals, but really anything, you kind of get your bed, like bass and guitar and drums and everything. And then if you have, like, I always try to pan equal and opposite energies away from each other. So you sort of have this stereo image that kind of moves, and it's a little more exciting. Like if you have a hi-hat pan slightly to the left, then do your shaker slightly to the right. Or, if you have a guitar that's doing an arpeggio and you have a synth doing an arpeggio part or something like that, then pan those, separately.
But then do you also, on the opposite end, sometimes make decisions about, like, these two instruments together are apart, so I'm going to pan them together?
Yeah. Sometimes, if they make a part, or if it's a solo acoustic and a vocal and it's a singer-songwriter thing, and they should be married, even if the singer didn't play acoustic, but maybe they should be married. And so they'll be together in the middle, or, whatever.
Now I know we're jumping all over, but when you do that solo acoustic and vocal thing, I know one of the challenges sometimes is if that's all you've got, is trying not to feel like, well, is this just going to be one big mono? But if you do the stereo miking for acoustic, is that something that you will rely on to have a single acoustic and a single vocal still come from the middle, but not feel quite totally 100% mono?
Well, that's always a trick. And honestly, sorry, Bill, but I typically do when I record acoustic, because what I'm recording is typically not bluegrass and not for like a hi-fi, acoustic part. I usually do two mics as close as I can get them together so they're going to be in phase. And I usually do a hi-fi and a lo-fi. So I'll do like a C12 and a 57, or a C12 and a ribbon, or, something that's going to kind of fill in the gaps, 67 and a 421 or something like that, something to, so that I can blend in more or less of the high end. And I won't commit that, just because I know later on in the mix, I might, if we add a bunch of stuff, I might need more of that lo-fi sound to make it kind of come through.
And your hi-fi, lo-fi technique, do you do that as the two spaced out stereo mics, or do you do that as they're like right next to each other?
Right next to each other, so that like they're pointing at the same exact spot.
Yeah, I like that trick a lot. In fact, I learned that from Richard Dodd on the show. And then he was describing Mike and Tom Petty's guitars that way. And so then I went and shot a video. So on my YouTube channel, I have a video called the Tom Petty acoustic trick. And when I did it and tried it, I was like, oh my God, that sounds great. But but in that instance, I didn't do hi-fi, lo-fi. I just did like a large diaphragm, small diaphragm. So it was more like you get an EQ blend. But I have done that with the 57, which was the next step, which was like maybe I did a U67 and a 57, and it really does. It gives you that, like, you've got the 57 gives you the hard rock and roll acoustic guitar.
Yes.
And the U67 gives you the big, beautiful, warm kind of thing, so that you can just kind of mix and match.
Yeah. And a lot of times that depends on the mix. So, if you're having a dense mix, maybe the 67 comes out a little too much like a shaker, because you've had that kind of shaker acoustic where you can't tell
what pick on the strings going.
And you can't hear any of the body. So that 57 kind of helps to bring out the body, and so you can actually hear a pitch and some tone without having to reach for the EQ and do something drastic. But as far as like going back to the Paul McCartney Mad Guy vocal, just panning it around, because so once you get your bed, if you have an element, kind of an extra element that's not paired with anything else, I typically just will set it at the same volume and just pan it left and right, and you'll find a hole where you can hear it better. You go, oh, okay. Well, there it's not being masked by something else. So that's really, there's no science to it other than just like, where does this fit? You just kind of pan it around.
Right.
Go,
so you're not like hardcore
spot.
left, center, right. That
not so much
LCR mixing necessarily.
I'll do before I started working with Bob, because that's what Mike Shipley was. He was LCR, everything LCR. And I mean, his mixes are just ridiculous. He was amazing. But then working with Bob, he was much more, he likes a less wide image. I think it might be, a time period kind of thing. Like things wide, especially if they poke out, really bother him. So he likes to have a concise mix that's, a lot closer. And so I got into, non-LCR mixing, because of Bob. So I can go both ways.
Well, let's actually jump to talking about some more mixing stuff now. Mm-hmm. Jared Neiman, Drink to That All Night was your number one platinum selling single. Congrats on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell us what your involvement was in that project. And then, and I believe you mixed that as well, right?
Yes.
So in the mixing stage, talk about some of the tricks that go into, because that's a very modern upfront voice kind of sound. So talk about some of the mixing tricks and techniques that help us bring a voice totally forward in a mix where we're never going like, I can't hear it.
Right. Yeah. That's a lot of country music is like that. And
I think there's some auto-tune tricks going in on there too.
Yeah. So I think in the verses, there's like an auto-tune thing. And it's actually not auto-tune. I did it in Melodyne and just kind of flatlined it. And then I also dropped it an octave to give it a kind of a vocoder-y effect.
Cool.
I do that a good bit, and it actually works really well.
The
in rap.
Octave drop just thickens up a vocal.
Yeah. And it kind of has this, especially if you mess with the format. So if you drop it an octave and flatline it and then mess with the format a little bit in Melodyne, you could really come up with some cool effects. And you can build a whole, kind of Imogen Heap style vocal section like that, just manipulating.
It's interesting you just brought up Imogen Heap too.
Oh man, I love it. Imogen Heap. She's a genius, absolute genius.
Have you followed, this is an aside, but have you followed Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and have you learned that Imogen Heap was one of the number one voices for music interfacing with that new technology?
Yes. She, the blockchain.
Yeah.
The whole blockchain thing, which I think is genius. I mean, try to find credits. Like I was just the other day trying to figure out who mixed something and produced something, and the artist didn't list it on All Music. There was no credits other than the performers. Yeah. And maybe it wasn't the artist. It could have been, probably was the label. But why would you not credit the creators, and why is it so difficult? It doesn't come on iTunes. It doesn't come on Spotify. A Tidal might have it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to find credits for stuff that you've worked on or other people have worked on.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think having that, and also for songwriting purposes and money where money should be properly dispersed.
Yep.
I think that's genius.
All right, so that is a rabbit hole. We can go down another time, but
absolutely.
maybe who knows? Maybe we'll have a podcast and we'll get deep into all that stuff at some point.
Yeah.
But so backing up, oh my goodness, where were we? Oh yeah, Jared's vocals.
Yes.
And the Melodyne. So that's what I wanted to ask you about. So the Melodyne stuff, when you're tuning with Melodyne, because it's a tool that I use a lot too, and I love it. And now I'm using Auto-Tune as well. And I have in the past. I just recently actually got it.
I need to get back into Auto-Tune also.
Well, it's great for those times where you're like, I really don't want to, have to manually do everything.
Yeah.
But when you're working with Melodyne, what's the technique or what's the method that allows you to feel like you can work quickly? Do you move all your vocals over to the Melodyne app and work in that and then bring them back? Or do you use it as plugins on individual tracks?
I used to, and I actually personally think this is faster, but I haven't done it like this in a while since Melodyne 4. In Melodyne 3, I used to use whatever that transfer app was. And
Bridge, I think.
Yeah, Melodyne Bridge, yeah. And transfer that over to the standalone, and then I would work in Melodyne and then print that back. And that was great. I like that because usually when I'm tuning, I'll know the key, and I think playing trombone and just tuning a lot of vocals. I don't need the.
Do you remember there being a trick for printing it back? Because I remember it was like you had to make a second track and then record that track over to that track and then pull it back in, and it got all kind of challenging at times.
Yeah, I think what I would do is I'd always have my Melodyne. I still do this even with plugin, even though I know it's probably not the best way to do it. But I would make a bunch of new tracks, and I would copy my comp up to those tracks, use those to send to Melodyne, and then print back to the master on a playlist, so that I would always have the untuned comp in a playlist below it, and I'd have the tuned Melodyne track.
Yeah, that's pretty smart.
So that's what I would do. And that way, even if I accidentally forgot to create a new playlist, I'd still have the comp in a separate track, and I just hide and make those inactive.
Right. So, and that's smart, because then if you're working in your session in Pro Tools, you can flip over to Melodyne and just work on vocals for a minute. But if you go back to Pro Tools and press play somewhere, you're going to hear that thing you just did in the context of the mix to see if you like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would definitely do that for when I do my, because I do pitch and timing, and make sure I wouldn't have any other plugins going, so I wouldn't have, latency and all of that. But I would I do my pitch first, and then I would do my timing on the lead vocal, and I would time all of the background vocals pretty much in the standalone.
Lockstep with the lead.
Yeah. And so that's how I would use Melodyne. And generally I'll go through and I'll kind of chop up, since it works on averages, I'll do a lot of chopping and separating the quote unquote blobs.
Right.
Where, if there's a little nuance where maybe a vibrato goes a little bit too high, or if it connects kind of a slur from one note to another, make sure that I make a bunch of different separate blobs, so that I'm not, and also so I'm not tuning breaths, because that gets a weird tone. So I'm typically going for a transparent, natural sounding tune. So I'll only use the pitch drift. Maybe I'll use the pitch the
pitch adjust or whatever it's called. So you can bring the vibrato
modulation, the pitch modulation. I can bring that closer in if I need to, but you can kind of start hearing that pretty quickly. I spend a lot of time in
Do you find it's easier to get away with the lengthening and shortening of notes and not hear it than it is to get away with manipulating the pitch too much?
I think you can do. It depends on the voice. Also, some voices like Andrea Bocelli, for whatever reason, you touch his. Not that he needs really much tuning at all. Maybe every now and then there's a syllable or something. But if you just touch it with Melodyne, it makes a sound with him. I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't work. But auto-tune works.
Interesting,
him.
yeah.
Yeah, but just a very little bit.
It is one of those good reminders that there's different tools out there, and some, just like different compressors,
yes,
they all sound a little different. So they can be good reasons to have all these tools. So you can go with the one that works for that use case. Also, if there's reverb in the room, if there's a little bit of natural echo, that tends to be something that you can hear the effects on.
Absolutely.
You want to try and turn it off for that part for the tails of things potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I actually have hotkeys set up, and so I can quickly hit, like if I hit M, it resets the pitch modulation. P does the overall pitch. D does the pitch drift. T does the timing. So I can always get back within a button push.
Are those all just hotkeys you set up inside Melodyne, or did you?
Yeah, if you go into your preferences, you can go and set those up, and it just makes it a lot faster. But now I'm working in Melodyne for the plugin, and that's great. And I do it the same exact way, just because.
Cool. All right, so once you've got your vocal tuned and you're back in the mix mode, what about some cool tricks about how to make sure that vocal sounds great? Is clip gain an important part of the process? Do you manually mess with sibilants?
Right.
Do we get into parallel processing, things like that?
So I personally haven't done any parallel processing on vocals. I've tried it, but I haven't ever quite gotten it to where I like it. I will do a little bit of clip gain if I need it. If there's like one word that's just jumping out, then I'll pull it down in the on the waveform. But generally speaking, I start off with the MDW EQ, and I go and I find any offensive frequencies, and that's a great plugin because you can hit. First of all, it's George Massenburg, and he's a genius. Second, if you hit the little number, there's a little color number by each frequency, each band, and so if you hit that, it'll instantly give you I think it raises it by like 12 dB with a tight Q, so you can sweep and find those frequencies that like take your head off or really make it muffled. So
and this is called MDW
EQ.
Nice.
Yeah, so you can sweep, and if you can't get, because it's not cheap, it's like $500 or something like that, but you can get it on a few different platforms. You can get it as a native or DSP AAX plugin, or I think they make VST.
But it sounds really good too.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. But also UAD does one, so you could get it through UAD if you so desire. But I think he designed the EQ3 also, and I've had a friend who
that's just built into.
It's built in. It's a little more
design,
cumbersome.
Yeah.
So it's free. It sounds great. Shipley, when I worked with Mike Shipley, he used that all the time. So he would just carve stuff out with that. But you need a few extra steps. So it depends on if you can afford it. If you can't afford the MDW, check out the EQ3. It's DigiRack. It's awesome.
Yep.
So anyway, I'll go through and I'll do, the filter out the low end if I need to. I'll do all my subtractive EQ to get the kind of nasty anomalies, and I'll listen quiet, I'll listen loud to see what sticks out. And sometimes I'll automate, or I'll add a second instance and automate a bypass if there's a section that gets, abrasive.
Right.
And then after that, I'll do, typically I'll do an 1176. I use the UAD, like the revision F, blackface compressor. And I'll do like a 20-to-1 with a faster attack and a fast release. And that'll kind of get it leveled out a little bit. And then I'll put an LA2A after that. And I just like the sound of those two together. It's kind of a great sound. It's a big vocal. And I've also been switching out that with the L-Ray, the Greg Wells BA6A. I think he has a BA6B, But whatever it is, it's a bigifier. It makes everything huge. And when I worked with Mike Shipley, again, he had gotten an RCA BA6A, and he was running all his vocals through it. It was just gorgeous. Just made everything sound so big. So we actually purchased. That was the first purchase we made for the new studio that we just built.
You got an actual one of those?
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's, oh man, we call it the Beast because it's just.
So the 1176 and the Li2A, do you like to use hardware for those, or you use UAD plugins? Or
UAD plugins sound great. So now I just started mixing in the new studio. We're calling it Soul Train Sound Studios. So my actual real signal chain is a Revision D 1176 through the Beast, through the BA6A, and then I go through a Pool Tech for a little bit of top end.
Nice.
Just nice air and stuff. And then I'll commit it if I like it, and then add a little bit of sizzle through like I love the Slate Digital Air plugin in the virtual rack. That thing's great. Or the Mag or Mog or however you say that. They have a nice air band. But a lot of it.
Well, now let's talk about your monitors too. I noticed that in your photo, it looks like maybe you have Barefoots in your studio. Is there a monitor that you enjoy mixing on? And have you also noticed that some monitors are more challenging to hear the air band when you're using the EQ, and other ones it's very obvious to you that it's there? Yeah.
So that was an older photo. That was at Bob Ezrin's studio. That's at Anarchy, and it was the Barefoots are very room dependent, and if it doesn't work in the room, it's tough. At least that's what I found. So I didn't really like that. I would check it because they got loud, but I wasn't a big fan of those. But during the Jared Neiman sessions, I was mixing Drink to That all night, and so I mixed that on a pair of Adams, was the A6s, I think, and a KRK sub. And, it came out great. I was really happy with it, but I noticed that it was significantly different in other spots where I listened. And I think it was the room. Those monitors did not fit the room. And so I went over, saw Chad Evans, and he let me borrow a pair of PMCs.
So Chad Evans now has Westlake
Pro in Nashville,
which is right over in Berry Hill. And I just went in there for the first time, and it is like your jaw hits the floor. Chad has always created environments like that here in Nashville. So Rockstars, if you're ever in Nashville and you want to really experience and see what pro audio looks like, find Chad.
Yes, all the guys over there.
Westlake space now. They're
fantastic. And anytime that I have not taken his advice, I've regretted it. He's an engineer, and all those guys who work there work as engineers and producers, players, and stuff. So they get their hands on these things, so they actually know what they're talking about, which is amazing. It's so precious. So at this point, I just go, okay. Sure.
So what did he direct, or how did he guide you?
He told me PMC 226s.
PMC 226s.
Yeah, so I tried them out. They're not cheap, but I have never been let down. I've never been surprised by a mix. I take those, and I ended up getting the sub too, the sub, or was it sub 1 or something like that. They have a funny name for it, but those two paired together, like you can hear everything. It's a seamless transition between the near fields and the sub. And I just don't guess. I don't even listen to other things.
And this is in your new space, right? You're talking about too, or not?
We upped it in the new space. So that's what I got when I was mixing the Drink to That all night.
Okay, well we can stay there for a moment.
Okay.
So in that space, describe what that space was that you were mixing in.
So that space.
Was this a home studio? Was this a design studio?
This was a design studio. It was the sort of the C room at the Ruckus room. And it had it was actually
Is that the room where Jamie put in the Pro Tools?
Yes.
The D-Control and the big mixing interface?
Yeah. So I was in there for a little while. Jimmy Lee Sloas, he's a bass player and an amazing producer. He produced the High Noon record. And so, yeah, it's kind of a reconditioned space, but Gene Lawson designed it, I think. And he and Jamie, I'm sure. And it sounded great. I loved it. I love that space so much. And
so Gene Lawson, Rockstars, he is a Nashville legend designer.
Mm-hmm.
He built the Lawson plates, reverbs. He built the Lawson microphones.
Yeah.
Very, very, I think of the Lawson microphone as having quite a lot of top end. It's a very like high
it's
frequency mic almost,
Yeah, absolutely. And anyway, but that room sounded great, but the monitors didn't quite fit it. And when I tried the PMC 226s, they worked. And everywhere I took it, they worked great. And so now in this new space, with that being in mind, so I loved them so much and took them everywhere that Bob Ezrin ended up buying the same set. So the 226s and then the sub, and then Johnny Reed, who owns Soul Train, he bought the same setup also for his place. So
nice.
Yeah, we have 3 different sets of the 226s.
Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, thanks. And you're welcome. So then we thought, well, we need some mains for the new studio. So we ended up going big, and we got the PMC MB3s. And they're the first set of main monitors that I can do a mix on. And it translates to, I've also got a pair of NS10s set up now.
Yeah.
So
as you can see, I'm still mixing on NS10s. And I've certainly enjoyed using them for a long time, but I'm at that point where I'm like really can't wait to explore, moving up in the monitor world. Now, so part of my question was, going back to the air EQ on a vocal, do you feel like you could make a good, accurate judgment on where to set that with NS10s, or is that one of those things where the higher end speakers reproduce what you're trying to add in a way that makes it easy to make decisions?
I think if I'm setting it, I would rather do it on the higher end speakers. So if I err on the side of caution instead of, just getting a vocal that's just going to take your head off, So I'll set it, and then I always check on, either NS10s or, ProAx are great. That kind of, flat frequency response. And I see you have the Avantone.
I love the Avantone mix cube.
Yeah.
I want to get a second one so that I don't actually have to hit the mono button.
Right.
Just put them on top of each other like Jamie does at the Ruckus Room. But I really enjoy it, and I really like it for the ease at which it helps me balance my mixes and quit being distracted by all the shiny things, of big speakers and volume and power, and just like listen and go like, okay, can I hear, if this was playing back on like a little clock radio in a bedroom, am I hearing the instruments,
Absolutely. And at Bob's place, he's got just a little iPod dock, an old school, I think it's an Altec Lansing iPod dock. And that works great because it serves that purpose where you can listen to something that's normal, that's like, that anyone will hear. I think Jamie uses an old set of Apple computer monitors, and
I think he does. Yeah. We've started also, I've got something called Airfoil and Audio Hijack, which will let me, and I'm using something called the Mini DSP. I think that's what it's called. It's a box that, because I was looking for a way to get from I have a Pro Tools HD system. So it's all like Pro Tools, when you get into the high end stuff, it's very much like a walled garden. You can't speak to the computer system audio anymore very easily, unless you use core audio for your interface. So not to get too tech with it, but they do have light pipes on the output of the HD 192s. And so I wanted a box that would just do the light pipe. I didn't want to buy like a $1,000 interface. It's like, I don't need more interface stuff. I really just want to take those 2 light pipes and bring them back in. And this little box would do that. Sorry, I'm taking a long time to tell this, but that brings it into the computer. Then Audio Hijack can route it, and Airfoil will stream it over the same Wi-Fi network, and you can pick it up on your phone or your iPad or something like that.
Awesome.
So then you can listen, and it does some weirdo stuff too. Like you can hear some almost like tape speed changes as it's like changing its sample rate to accommodate the network or something. But it lets you very quickly hear the audio playing off of your iPhone.
That's awesome.
While you're mixing. There's still a delay.
Yeah.
But it's not as bad as some of the tools I used to use, like Nicecast was one where you could send it over the internet.
Yeah, I never did anything like that, but that would have been very useful.
I've never had a platinum #1 selling record, so maybe I don't need to be doing it.
Well, I have nothing to say.
There you go. You don't have to say anything. You can just sit back and cross your arms if you want. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you're ready to start mastering your own records at home, then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I mastered my own record, Skadoosh, using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free course Mixmaster Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is these techniques would work for you in whichever DAW you're using right now. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads for you to practice mixing and even include in your mixing portfolio if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to Mixmaster Bundle to get started for free now, or look for the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. All right, dig it. So other powerful vocalists that you've recorded and mixed. JJ Shiplett.
Oh, man.
And then also the Andrea and Matteo Bocelli.
Yeah. Those stuff. Oh, man. Talk about vocalists.
Yeah. What lessons have you learned about both recording and mixing like extremely powerful singers? How is that different from the stuff we're used to with the singer-songwriter with an acoustic guitar?
It's way more challenging. Now, I didn't record either one of those vocals. Johnny Reed is another guy his voice, he's my partner with the new studio and everything, but he is one of the best vocalists. He's got this like Joe Cocker meets Rod Stewart kind of voice. And so like with him, it's more controlled, and it's just about, you could put anything in front of him and it's going to sound like him. It's going to sound great. But then when I was in LA, I recorded Pat Monahan from Train, who had such a big voice. I mean, and it's on the more focused upper mid-range side. So that was a lot more challenging. And just, especially when you only have an artist in there for a short period of time, don't try to get the best vocal sound ever and get the hottest signal or anything. You want to get a clean, this is my opinion, but you want to get a clean vocal that you can work with later on and not regret.
Do you feel like, so translation, maybe the singer doesn't care so much about triple compression right now while they're recording?
Right.
Maybe they just need it to sound
clean.
Yeah. I've actually had singers shoot me down because of compression. Where they hear their voice is like they're trying to add power and the power is not coming back.
Yeah,
because the compressor's grabbing it.
I've had some vocalists do that too, and so you can always ask and say, hey, do you want some compression on it? A lot of vocalists know what that means. At least if they've been in the studio before, they know if they like a lot or a little. You can also, if you know that you're conservative on the input side and you're not, killing the mic pre or something like that, then you can put a DSP plugin like I'll throw up the BF76 on the vocal on the monitor side. So you're not printing it, but they can still hear the compression, and it gives you a little more control if it's done.
Right, interesting. So that's a good tip too. It's just saying, like, as long as the mic and the mic pre are getting you a good capture of the signal, it doesn't matter that much that you're using a compressor plugin like the BF1176, that you're maybe not going to choose actually for the mix. Don't
Right.
get caught up in it, like trying to get the perfect everything right then and there.
Yeah, because you only have, and this is something that Bob has taught me a lot. No one's going to worry about, or no one's going to say, man, the EQ on that vocal was great. You don't have that time to be that precious. Do broad strokes, add a little bit of top end shelf if you want, if you know the mic and if you know the setup, filter out a little bit of low end for the plosives or something like that. Get a decent level. But if the singer sings it great the first time, you're that's it. You got it. You don't want to go, wait, hold on, Paul McCartney. I haven't gotten this vocal right yet, or hold on, whatever. You will get fired so quickly because our job isn't to get the perfect vocal sound on the way in. It's to get a good recording and reproduction of a great performance. So without that great performance, if you stifle the artist in any way, you are screwing up your job. You're screwing it up. So anyway, get a decent level. Find out if they want some compression or not. If so, do it on the monitor side. Don't commit to something that's going to be terrible. Although I do have to say, we did a demo session with Chris Daughtry. This is back, early 2000s, and he came in, and I had the mic preset probably one click too high. It was a Neve 1064, I think, and he was maybe 2 clicks too high. He was just scorching it because he is a very powerful singer, and it was a 67 and had a revision B, but it was a blackface 1176 that was going through. That was getting hit pretty hard too.
Yeah, that's probably what I'm going to do to your voice on this podcast.
Awesome.
Just completely scorch it.
Yeah, bring it. Make me sound cool. But man, I listened back. I was embarrassed because he just nailed it the first time. I didn't have any time to set it, and it sounded great in the mix though. The way it hit because it was just on the part where it was really kind of soaring in the chorus, the second chorus, he hit it really hard and it got distorted, and it was a cool distortion.
Yeah.
So if it happens, it happens.
Where did the cool distortion come from? Do you think it was a thing in the chain?
I think it was the Neve. I'm pretty sure it was the Neve.
Right. So the mic pre is the place where it can just typically distorts.
Yeah. And had I had it to do over again, I probably would have padded the mic pre, or not the mic pre, but the mic itself, or at least
that's tricky sometimes because some pads on mics
sometimes they sound
they're
weird.
Tone killers.
Yeah. So I don't know what I would have done, but it was fine. I mean, it was distorted, but it worked out. And it was only a demo, but it did actually add a lot of character. I liked what it did with it. So, anyway,
that's cool, man. Well, let's talk about another instrument that's important in the mixing stage that you've gotten quite good at it. Blake Shelton, that's another artist you work with.
Well, on Blake, I actually only, I think it was just editing or tuning.
Okay.
So
right.
that just
but here's what I'm getting at is you've done a bunch of country stuff now too.
A little bit. Yeah. Not as much. Yeah.
What about, in the country records that you have mixed or worked on, they have that required big Nashville snare drum sound.
Oh yeah.
A lot of times. What are some secrets to getting a big country snare sound that we should know about?
Well, I still feel like I'm trying to figure the country side of things out because almost all of my techniques and way of working on the mix stem from Mike Shipley, just because I used to watch him. I was able in my space. It was an editing suite above the mix room in a house, and I would actually watch him. His screen could come up on my screen, and I had his mix coming through an external. So I would just sit there and listen and watch him mix. So I would just study everything that he did because he was so good. And so what he would do is add, and it was by hand, maybe.
Hold on, that sounds like what I've heard, like Crystal Art Algae's setup described as too at times. Is this a situation where you're in a separate room, same screen, different monitors, he doesn't hear you, but you talk to each other on a talkback or something? How does it work?
It was set up so that we could do that, and he was using the that D command or D control, like the same one that Jamie had. And
That's the $100,000 mouse.
Yeah, $100,000 mouse. And he loved it. He absolutely loved it. And then I had a little Pro Control up in my room. So we were running through the same network. And at the time you could, like, we actually had a USB switch. So we could switch the iLock from one computer to the other when it asked for, it was before you had to have it plugged in all the time.
Right.
Sorry, everyone. But I was just prepping stuff for Mike anyway.
I used to do such crazy stuff in here. Like I had two computers and I had a switch that would switch the keyboards and the monitors from one computer to the other.
Yeah,
and stuff.
That's exactly what we had. The KVM switch.
Stuff.
It was amazing.
That's what I had too.
Yeah. And anyway, the intent was we could, I could be working on something up there and then he could switch and listen to what I was doing or vice versa if I had to fix an edit or something like that. But we never ended up using it like that. I would just do all the editing and mix prep and stuff and then send it to him. And then later on, I kind of eased into assisting when his typical assistant was, needed a day off or had to, something else or vacation or something like that. So, anyway, we never used it like that, but we wanted to.
So, but where were we though? We were talking about the
snare
stuff. Yeah, you were watching the stuff you learned from Mike.
Yeah. So the thing with Mike, and he was so good at this. His drum sounds were amazing. They were present, especially with the snare. They were in your face, but they weren't obtrusive. They weren't crushed. They weren't. It was just there and perfect. And so what we would do is just load in, 40 different snare samples and like 20 kicks. And this is how I would approach it later on too. So I would have the snare drum that was recorded and I would EQ, try to get it to sound like I wanted. And then I would go through each one and bring up a fader and blend it in and see if it matched. If it didn't match, I would just toss it, it'd be done. But then if it would fill in a gap and match the tone, if you would solo up each sample, they probably wouldn't sound too good.
Right.
They
wouldn't have been the ones you would have chosen by themselves.
One might have more kind of crack to it. One would have more wash. One would be low. One would be, woody. One would have ring, and various different rings, different frequencies and stuff like that. So, I just go through all of the 40 snare drums, and there were a few that always seemed to help and work. And then the main snare, especially the snare bottom, because that had all the internal groove, all the little roughs and little ghost notes and stuff. Those would be still the focus. So you could mute all of the samples and it would still sound like the same snare. You put the samples back in and it would sound just bigger. It would have those missing pieces to it.
Samples. So you might end up with a couple of
it might be 15 samples.
15 samples stay in the mix.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But some might be way down there. Some, and he had some that were like gunshots and, and he actually has the original Def Leppard sample, dry and the reverb, which is pretty cool.
All right. So now 15 samples getting added. Are they 15 samples playing back from I don't think you can do 15 in Trigger, but did you have a plug-in Trigger back then? Or was this manually on 15 more tracks?
It was manually, and there was a process and it was all sample accurate.
What year was this too?
This would have been 2004 to 2006.
Okay. I met a guy who was doing some pretty amazing, I learned some amazing drum replacement tricks right around 2003, 2004, maybe.
Yeah.
And it was, and I'm just going to see if I can remember a little bit, because you'd be like, that's the thing. Or you'd be like, no, never do it that way. But it was, what was the drum replacer audio suite plugin we always use? It was Sound Replacer.
Yeah.
So it was Sound Replacer, which would do a pretty good job if you used it just sort of in stock mode for adding a single snare.
Yeah.
Or no, I think it would do 3 samples within Sound Replacer.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So it would keep 3 snares together and replace them maybe one time to a snare, and it could sound pretty good. You get pretty close. But then he said the trick was you had to go in and find like the first waveform of a kick or a snare in there and chop it off so that it had a hard start and it was always exactly the same like phase location of the drum start. And you would manually go through every single snare and do that first. And then Sound Replacer would consistently sample accurately. You could load in new samples, come back tomorrow and add it. And you could just layer tracks that way. So was that anything
Not even
similar?
close.
Not even close. All right, cool. There you go. All right,
No, but that's cool. Like I love hearing different ways of doing this.
And also Rockstars, this is to make you understand just how easy we've got it now with something like triggers.
Trigger's amazing.
Yes.
Oh man, I use it all the time.
Slate's
Like,
trigger plugin.
Now I still, if it's a big mix and there's a budget and everything that allows more time, I'll put it in by hand because when it is sample accurate, and you have to do the dynamics by hand also, so it doesn't sound like a machine gun snare drum fill, and know which ones to leave out that are ghosts that are going to come through the main, snare drum track. But so the way that I do it, and it's very hard to explain, but I'll try. I'll try to be quick about it too. But so I use Beat Detective on the snare top and also on the kick in. And I will set it to 0 trigger pad, and you kind of pull up the threshold so you're getting all of the snares or all of the kicks, whatever. And then you chop it, you separate regions, and then you hide.
Do you
Beat
have
Detective.
the buffer, or what's it called? The padding?
Trigger pad? That's a 0.
Trigger pad? It's a 0.
It's a 0.
Where the chop is right at the beginning of that sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, and it's better if you do this with an uncompressed snare, because if there's compression, you can see the woof of the air from the snare or from the stick.
The stick approaching the head of the
approaching
snare.
it. And so that'll give you sometimes a false trigger. So sometimes you have to do low emphasis instead of enhanced or whatever it is. Anyway, so you chop it all up, and then I have a template of all of my samples that are already sample accurate, and so that the sample starts right at, kind of like what you were saying, right at the transient of the sample. So that's already in a session. They're all grouped, and I make them, so I'll consolidate them so they're all the same length, and I'll give a whole lot of empty space at the end. And so they're grouped, and then I import those right under the snare, and using the hand tool, I'll click, and I've done it so many times, I don't know what the key command is.
I know that
but there's
feeling.
a snap to function. I forget if it's like control or command or something, but if you click on it, it'll snap all of your grouped snare samples to, important part. Sorry, go back to that original snare that you've chopped up. You have to lock it.
Right, so you can't move it around by accident.
Yes, you have to lock it. And you also, it's better if you take off the gain info so you don't accidentally click on that. But using the hand tool, you click on the snare, the original snare region with the hit, and then you snap to, and that gives you your first one, and it's right at that same cut point.
Right.
And then you go to the next one, and it's like, I think it's Control Option. I don't know. It's muscle memory at this point, but I think it's Control Option. If you hit those two together, and then you click up on the snare hit and then down on your sample, and that is snap to and copy. So you just go click, 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 click. So you go up to the original, then click down. So you're basically highlighting a little region of that snare, the original snare that you've chopped up, and that's the starting point, and it'll snap the sample and copy the sample to that point.
Yeah, I think that's what I used to do too. I would take, do something like that where I'd tab to the transient of the snare, and then I would have that the cursor grouped to the track below it, and I would just hit paste
Yeah.
And you can get it to paste the snare sample there and tab to the next one, paste.
Yeah.
paste,
And you could
like
do
that.
it. You could do it like that. And if you chop it up, because I used to have a macro set up on my trackball before they wouldn't allow you to do that. We were just talking about that earlier. And I would do whatever that key command. It's like tab, semicolon, VP or something like that.
Right.
So I had that set up as a button on my mouse, and then they took it away.
Well,
which was
again,
such a bummer.
Luckily, we've got Trigger now. Rockstar,
Yeah, Trigger
so we can just use
way
that.
better.
Yeah.
Just check the phase of it.
Well, cool, man. Well, we're going long. So let's see here. Some other artists, pretty amazing that you got to work with. You mixed a live record, the Speak Now World Tour live for Taylor Swift.
Yes.
Any quick tips you want to share with us about what you learned about mixing a live album? I noticed the crowd noise was a big deal on that record.
Yeah. So the crowd noise. Well, if you're going about recording a live record, make sure you have good live mics, because what they had done, and I think it was just the sound guys, so they were just recording it. The audience mics were facing toward the stage.
Oh no, they're supposed to face towards the audience.
Yeah. So they were like big room mics. So they were completely unusable. So they ended up actually hiring a truck to go to the Atlanta show, and they recorded 2 shows of that. We had to put them in. It was painstaking to try to get
Just put an audience.
in an audience, but to get
interesting,
the bleed to line up and not sound weird. And that whole process was like, it was crazy. That's a whole nother.
Yeah, that's one of those things. So if
episode.
you're going to record a live show, maybe even a club, I think most of us, our first chance is like, we go record our friend's band at a club. you know? But it's like, record the close mics on stage, get a really good stereo miking of the stage, I think, because that's where you get all the power of the liveness of the stage.
Yeah.
And then the close mics give you that detail of not having things sound lost. But then just like put mics out, you could stick a mic in the middle of the audience somewhere, right above everybody's heads, just pointing down. And just remember, that's not part of the sound of the music. That's part of the sound of the in-betweens.
Yeah. And that is so important for a live record, because it's really hard to fake that. And I had to mix another live record about a year and a half
There's
ago.
nothing worse than a live record where it doesn't sound like there's anybody at the show.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you want to make it rock. You want to make it sound like it's 10 times as big. But yeah, like there was one where they didn't record any audience mics. I'm like, this is a live. Are you kidding me? And so it was, you had to find some canned audience, and which you can only do so much with, but just try to ride it up in the right spots. And then I would take all of the bleed on stage, if there were any like chants or hand claps or whatever, and gain those up like 40 dB just to get some life into it,
exactly.
like use any kind of bleed that you can, if there was a mic that was on that no one was like some background.
But
vocal.
you also don't really want to have a mic too close to anybody, because then you're just going to hear those single voices a lot.
Exactly.
We'll be talking about like getting a beer at the snack bar.
Audience miking is crucial for live mixes, but the Taylor thing, that was man, it was a process, but it was fun. And
then another band that is quite good live that you worked with, you did a couple of projects, I think, with Fish.
Yes,
that was trip.
I was a big Fish fan, before we did those records, but I had this vision of going in, and it would be like all fogged out in there, and everyone was totally relaxed. But
so were you recording them?
Yeah, we recorded them here in town.
I know we're going long, but I got to ask you, what did you learn? Like, what was a way to record Fish? I mean, I assume they want to play together. They're not too interested in overdubs.
Yeah, it was totally that. First of all, you're always in record, because they could just look at each other and start jamming and come up with a song. Like, you don't do playlists with Fish. You just one
session that keeps rolling.
Yeah. Like,
cool,
maybe different songs will be a different session, but you just keep on rolling, and you put markers in as you go.
Now, so now here's the thing that happens to the nervous engineer. We go, what if it drops out of record? I don't want to lose my thing. What's the technique to manage that?
Technique to manage that, when you know that they're having a little break for just a second, you hit space bar and then immediately start recording again and hit save.
And you'd make it in, you turn off the settings so that the cursor doesn't rewind back to 0. When you hit record, you have to have the cursor follow your playhead. Right?
Yeah, it's N, I think, is the quick key for that, because I always accidentally hit it.
Yeah, that's the one we always accidentally hit.
So always record. And then, they're such a cool band. And they're taskmasters. I mean, when it's time to record, they are working. That's like, I was so blown away by their work ethic, and they're all great guys. And those were some really amazing sessions. And I went up to the barn once and got to hang out with them and for rehearsal and pre-pro and stuff.
All right, dude.
Super cool.
Trey Anastasio's Guitar Town. Give us the secrets.
The secret is, don't fuck it up. I mean, it's there, it's that, I forget the name of it, but that guitar that he uses, and then it's his playing, the style. I mean, you're just not going to replicate it. And he's using a Bogner now.
Oh, cool.
But in the records, we also had him play, a Telly, and had him play some different guitars and stuff. And it still sounds like him.
Yeah.
But there's something magical about that guitar, his whole setup. When he comes to do, we call it like Guitar Week, and it's Trey, and he comes down and he sings and plays. Like, he brings his whole live rig. They have a truck that gets shipped from wherever they're playing, and they unload, take a full day of setup.
Right. Why would he have separate stuff? He's just always on the road.
Yeah, exactly. And when you go to record Fish, they don't bring like a box truck from like a Nashville session. They bring an 18-wheeler that they back up, and they load everything. They have 2 techs with, their whole tech rig there.
Like a live show. But
it's a live show.
Record it.
Yeah, it's insane.
Now, do you feel like you're required to mic up all that stuff, or do you just? I guess so, because there's no time to think.
Yeah, I mean, we did take some time, and there was pre-pro also. And the great thing is, so Ben is their engineer up in Vermont at the barn. And so he actually brought, they've got an API, and he brought all of the 200 series mic pre's. So a lot of it was done on the same mic pre's. And then if there was a fix or an overdub or something that needed to happen on drums, they would just record it up there in the barn. Which was awesome, and it blended really well.
You had the consistency of sounds.
So we try to make that as seamless as possible. There were some different mics and stuff like that, but generally speaking, it was the same texture. But yeah, I mean, mic up all the toms, mic up all the.
Do you think you still
thing.
did the SM7 and the Royer for the guitar mics?
Yeah, that's what I used.
That's cool, man. Now we know.
Yeah, and I think it was a C24 on Fishman's overhead, which is just easy and sounds great. It's a stereo C12 in essence. So
they just played at Bonnaroo when we were there.
Oh, I missed that.
Here in the summer, and saw some of that. And then my assistant, Will Kienzl, is a great engineer, and he's my head engineer at Bonnaroo now. He was telling me all about some of the backstory of Fish, and he was like, dude, Page side is the rage side. Apparently that's like a big deal. That's a big expression. It means like if you go to that side of the stage where Page, the keyboard player, is playing it, then everybody's really like getting wild and partying or something.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, man, they're just such a cool band. Great people, and Page is just a sweetheart and so talented. I'm just such a big fan. I was a fan before, and that's one of those sessions where I'm sitting there once we got kind of got going, and I got the monitor side good in the control room and stuff. I'm sitting there. I would just like get lost in the music and just imagine myself back, in my dorm room listening to Junta, which I found is Junta. I always called it Junta, but it's Junta.
Is that the one with the horse being? No, that's Hoist.
No, that's Hoist. Junta is it's got Esther and does that bouncing around the room? It's the double CD, if there is that anymore.
Well, very cool, man. I think, we may have to have you back on the show at some point so we can really just like focus in on some other topics too. But why don't I take you to a final closing question here?
Yes.
This one is hypothetical.
Okay.
You've done a lot of stuff. You've been through a lot of experiences and you've learned a lot. But if you could go back now to the early years and find young Justin,
yes,
playing trombone, working on your trombone shops, wanting to be in, a psychedelic rock band one day. What advice would you go back and give yourself, like right when Justin was discovering the studio and thinking like, man, I'd like to do this. If you could go back and give yourself one bit of advice, say, listen, dude, this is the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice would you go back and give yourself?
I would say if maybe I was a little bit older and just getting into it, I would say focus on the business side. Like, remember, it's still a business. You do need to get paid because you do need to, pay your bills and all that stuff. That's important. I think that gets lost a lot in the passion, which we need to have. And I think a lot of us, if we go through the hell that we go through to get,
what are some, if you were going to just give us a couple of business tips that you feel like you learned along the way?
Oh man, I'm still learning. That is not that's not my strong suit,
or maybe mistakes around the business. That's usually where the learning comes from, right?
Yeah. I would say, do have a rate for yourself and, talk to other people, figure out what a decent rate is and don't sell yourself short, but have a rate. Cause then if you have a spot to start, you can negotiate. A lot of times, it's like, I don't know, what do you have? And then you're already at a disadvantage, so that's a big thing. And then also, so often we're the first ones to talk ourselves down in price, and it happens. It's any freelance guy, especially if you're passionate about it, and I do it all the time. I say, well, my normal price is this, but I guess I could do. And before they even say no to that first price, you are saying, but I can give you some more wiggle room.
I know. It's we're like our own worst enemy.
Yeah. And it's because we want to do it and we love doing it, and like when we're excited about a project, the last thing we want to think about is the money side, because that's the uncomfortable side. I hate talking about money. It's like
fishing. When you go to fish, you learn when you get that nibble, you don't just rip the rod away.
Yeah.
Right away. You have to let it get a good nibble, and then you get a little tug, and then you start reeling it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you try and when you react too much because of that first phone call, that first possibility.
Yeah. Or, even if they do a little bit of a head nod and a grimace or something like that, they're not saying no yet. You can even give them, say, hey, listen, if I'll mix it. If you don't like it, don't pay me. No hard feelings. I won't do it. If you do like it, this is my rate.
Right.
That's not the worst thing to do.
Right.
Then you're kind of betting on yourself. So I would definitely tell myself early on, have some confidence in yourself, because we are I think all engineers are like that. You don't give yourself enough credit. You don't have the confidence, because we're all like, we hear the mistakes in what we do.
Yeah.
We don't hear the greatness.
We still hear the mistakes.
Yeah, no matter what, you listen to it and go, oh, I can't listen to that. But, the hi-hat's up, half a dB too much. Or, I pan the vocal to the same side as the whatever.
Just remember, rock stars, your greatest mentor, the person, your number one hero, still thinks that they're doing crappy work and here's all the mistakes they do.
Yeah. Everyone I've talked to, Mike Shipley, he couldn't listen to the stuff he did 10 years ago. He thought he never spoke highly of himself. So, that's just, and he was an absolute genius. So
yeah,
anyway,
nice, man.
That's what I have to say.
Well, so thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, dude. Awesome
thanks
having
for having
you here.
me.
Let the rock stars know how they can find you online and follow you. How can they reach out to you if they need to make their next record?
Yes. So My website is www.justincortelyou.com, and on it you can find my email. You can email me directly through the website. You can see a list of credits, and please reach out.
And it's Cortelyou.
Yes, that's it.
Cortelyou.
Yes.
Nice.
Don't make me Cortelyou.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you very much for being on the show.
Yes,
dude.
thank you for having me.
So many cool stories. Really fun to listen to this stuff. And I hope we got to enough. I know I said we were going to do a lot of mixing stuff, and I think we touched on some really good elements. So, but mixing as well comes from recording.
Yes, and I'll leave you with one last thing. Mike always said, just turn the knob till it sounds good.
Yep.
So, just turn the knob till it sounds good. Don't freak out.
And if you keep turning the knob back to the same spot, maybe take a note so you remember where that is. Maybe you can just turn it there before you start.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Awesome, dude. Thanks, man. Well, we'll see you around the studio.
All right, sounds good. Take it easy.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio. Just look for the link in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lyd Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.